All right. So I've been thinking about it for a while. I wanted to make a video about these Tartarian buildings. There's lots of people posting about them now, and I live in Jerusalem, and so in Jerusalem there's lots of these buildings, just a few blocks from me over here, and there's also lots of these buildings all around the land. So I've been traveling around and I was going into these buildings. I was fascinated by them before I even heard of this Tartarian thing, and before I was even able to make the connection of what was going on with these buildings. And now that I have this connection, it's really interesting to go into these buildings. It's really obvious to see that these buildings are something else. Nobody builds anything like these anymore. And all of these buildings are built with extreme resonance capabilities. And all of these buildings are owned by the same things. They're either owned by governments, by churches, or by institutions. And in a way, if you look about it, all of these different groups that own these buildings, it's the same force that we're being subjected under. Um, their governments, their religions, and their institutions. They're the things that program our minds and tell us how to experience reality. And so that one force somehow is holding all of these buildings, and sounds like they've had them forever. And we don't even know how long they've had them for. So it just seems as though they've always had them. And but the more you look at them, the more that you see that these all these institutions are simply just kind of holding these structures, and they don't allow us into them unless under their rules. And we can't go into them and make sounds or use this resonance capability. And all of the buildings, all of the churches are always designed the same. They have a big dome, and then they usually have tiered down smaller domes inside, almost like like a seashell or something that just kind of tears itself down. And at the back is always the smallest tier is always where they have their the church has their the stand where the priest stands or whatever. It's the area where you can't go. And always in the biggest dome, there's always a big hole straight up into the sky in the center. There's just a big wide open round hole. And so all of these structures are really, really similar. And what I started noticing was, as I got into this Tartarian idea, as I went into these buildings and these churches, I would look at the murals very differently. I would look at them with different eyes. Instead of them trying to understand them through this religious context, I would start to understand them through this Tartarian context. And it changed the whole way I saw these things. So I've kind of got a weird theory now that's been going on with these things. And I'll try to put it out here, and I think maybe I'll make another video if anybody's interested in this. I just wanted to see if anybody's even interested in this concept. But it seems as though these structures are built in resonance. It seems as though they've been there for quite a while, and there used to be quite a few of them that were knocked down in the past. But they seem to be kind of the main structures that we used to have, were these extremely exquisite buildings with supreme resonance. And now all the buildings are held by the institutions. So it seems as though all these buildings were somehow connected, and that was the feeling that I got. And as I went into them and I started seeing the murals inside, it started making sense that these buildings were used for something, and the murals were describing what the buildings were used for. And what it seems like is that the buildings were connected through some sort of resonance pattern and some sort of frequency, because on the top of them they have different things. Some have crosses with little bars, some have an arching moon, but they all have some sort of metal structure on the top. And these metal structures maybe would be used to connect the other buildings as they would resonate. And the feeling that's coming to me from looking at these murals, I went around and I looked at a lot of these murals inside, and a lot of the churches always depict the same picture. It's always the picture of Mother Mary, doesn't matter which church you're in, the Mother Mary holding a small Jesus child. And this Jesus child is symboling out to the world, and the Mother Mary is looking at the child. So I'll put up some pictures here. I had a whole bunch more for around Jerusalem, but I can't find them, so I just pulled some off the internet here, just to give you the idea. And what it looks like in these murals is that it's always to do with angels, the skies, the clouds, the heavens, and it looks like spirits coming down from the skies and the heavens down, and coming into this Mother Mary type figure, which holds them and contains them, which now has a child, but it's not a child. The child is a grown-up, it's an adult that is looking out at the world and gesturing to the world. The mother is just looking at the child, but the child is it's small, but it's an adult. It's an adult form, and everybody around the child is always respecting the child as though it's something special. And so part of me started thinking, okay, look at, in Jerusalem, there's all these churches, and you can see, I'll put some pictures up here, but the churches are right on the valley. There's a valley, and there's churches on one side and lots of churches on the other, the Dome of the Rock and all these churches. And they're very lined up. You look through the windows, you can see that these buildings were definitely made with some sort of lineup together towards them. And right beside it, on the whole other side of this mountain, is the Mount of Olives, which is the place where all of the religions are promised that the people will begin when the promised day comes. Those are where people will ascend first, or where they'll be resurrected first. So the whole side of this mountain is just graves. I'll show you some pictures. Maybe I've got them. I'll put them up now. And so the idea started coming to me as I was traveling through, that maybe these are some sort of resurrection chambers, and the murals on the top seem to portray this. They seem to portray spirits coming in, I'm guessing through this hole in the center somehow, into this nurturing feminine arms. And it's this nurturing feminine that seems to know who they are. Also, the child seems to know who they are. And I think that there were some sort of resurrection chambers where we would be given new bodies or new being, but we would remember who we are. Because in all of these murals, again, the child is always an adult and everybody's respecting them, always. And it's always being held by this lovely feminine figure, which was probably the one running the chamber of some sort. There's always a masculine figure that's associated in the murals with the structure itself. And then inside the structure is this feminine figure, which is nurturing the child. And the child knows who it is. And these are all on the Mount of Olives, where all the people believe that they will be resurrected in the time of the end, and where the resurrection will begin, and right beside these structures. And it seems like these structures were set up some sort of a pattern or grid, maybe worldwide, I don't know, connecting through different frequencies on the top, where you could go in and you could be resurrected with full knowledge of who you are, as well as the people coming in would know who you are. There was some sort of a system set up that would allow this to happen. And I think what's happened is this force, whatever it is, that came into our world maybe not so long ago, maybe 100 or some years ago, or even less, took over these structures, and they took over our ability to resurrect and remember who we are. And what happens now is we die and we are born again in some place of the world. Maybe they've taken over the functions of this. It's really interesting. I'm from the middle of Canada, and there was a Tartarian structure in the middle of my little town in 200 people in the middle of nowhere in Canada. We went to school in it. It was called the Castle School. It was just a structure like nothing else. We just assumed it was the old school in town. I don't know. We went to school there from kindergarten to grade 3. And they've torn it down now, of course. But it was surely a Tartarian structure of some sort. It had all of the markings of it. It had all of the structure of it. And it was in the middle of nowhere in Canada. So I feel like maybe what's happening now is when we need to change our body for whatever reason, it's getting tired, we're resurrected not knowing who we are, and the people bringing us in don't know who we are. We're born into families who have no clue who we are, who don't know who they are, and we're just kind of put out into this world with no memory of anything. And it seems as though if they've taken over these structures, and that's what they're doing, this is a great thing for them to do. We're born without knowledge of who we are, without the continuance of our being into this world. And what chaos it's bringing. I mean, look at us. We're just running around. We none of us know who we are, where we come from, or what we're doing here. We're just struggling. And maybe it's through these structures. And I really feel like if we can get one of these structures somehow and work with it and begin to get it to resonate, I believe it might activate the whole network, maybe worldwide. I'm not sure. It's really hard to get into these buildings, but there's lots of them around here. So I've been keeping my eyes open in Jerusalem. Anyways, it's a whole theory. Maybe I can put together some more videos because I've thought it out a lot more. But I just thought I'd throw this out and see what you guys thought. So I hope you enjoy this, and that's it for now.